He stood in front of the mirror, fumbling with his tie for the third time. His hands were shaking, not from excitement but from something closer to fear. Fear that tonight wouldn't be enough, that he wouldn't be enough. His daughter appeared in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She was 6 years old, with eyes too observant for her age. She tilted her head and watched him struggle with the navy blue fabric around his neck. "Daddy, why are you wearing that? You never wear ties." He forced a smile, the kind adults use when they're lying to children. "I have somewhere important to go tonight, sweetheart." "A date?" She said the word carefully, like she'd heard it before but didn't quite understand it. "Yes, a date." "With who?" He hesitated. Someone I really want to like me." She frowned, confused by the nervous energy radiating from him. "But people already like you, Daddy." He laughed, but it came out hollow. "It's different, honey. Adults have to impress each other." From the window, he could see his neighbor's porch. She was there, like she always was in the evening, sitting on her wooden chair with a book in her lap. But she wasn't reading. She was watching him through the glass, and when their eyes met for a brief second, she looked away quickly. He didn't notice the sadness in that glance. He never did. She had been there for years, always in the background, always invisible. Before we dive into this story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing how far these stories travel. And if you think stories about love that hides in plain sight deserve to be told, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's go back to the beginning and see how we got here. 3 months earlier, everything had felt impossible. He sat in his car outside the office building, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Inside his pocket, his phone buzzed with another message from the daycare. His daughter had a fever. Again. They needed him to pick her up immediately, but he was already late for a meeting. The third one this week. His boss had pulled him aside yesterday with that look, the one that said his patience was running thin. Single fathers got sympathy at first, but sympathy had an expiration date in the corporate world. He closed his eyes and made the only choice he could. He texted his boss an apology and started the engine. When he arrived at the daycare, his daughter was sitting alone in the office, her cheeks flushed with fever, her eyes glassy. The director gave him the same tight smile she always did, the one that said, "This is becoming a problem," without actually saying the words. He carried his daughter to the car, buckled her in, and felt the weight of failure pressing against his chest. That night, after the medicine and the cool washcloths and the bedtime story, he sat alone at the kitchen table with a stack of bills he couldn't pay and a calendar full of responsibilities he couldn't meet. The mortgage was late. Again. His daughter needed new shoes. The car was making a noise that promised expensive repairs. He was drowning, and nobody was coming to save him. He didn't hear the knock at first. When it came again, softer this time, he dragged himself to the door and opened it. His neighbor stood there, holding a covered dish. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wasn't beautiful in the obvious way, the way that made men turn their heads on the street. But there was something calming about her presence, something steady. "I heard your daughter wasn't feeling well," she said quietly. "I made soup. It's nothing fancy, just chicken and vegetables, but my mom always said it helped." He stared at her for a moment, caught off guard by the kindness. They'd been neighbors for almost 2 years, ever since she'd moved into the house next door. They waved when they saw each other. They made small talk about the weather, but this felt different. "You didn't have to do that," he said. She shrugged. "I know, but I wanted to." He took the dish from her hands, felt the warmth of it against his palms. "Thank you, really. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." She smiled, and it reached her eyes. "Just take care of her, and yourself." She turned to leave, and he watched her walk back to her house, wondering why that simple gesture felt like the first good thing that had happened to him in months. But he didn't think about it too long. By the next morning, it was just another act of neighborly kindness, easily forgotten in the chaos of his life. The weeks that followed were more of the same. He juggled work and parenting with the desperation of someone barely keeping their head above water. His daughter recovered, but his stress didn't. He tried to be present, tried to be the father she deserved, but some days he felt like he was playing a role he wasn't qualified for. His ex-wife had left 3 years ago when their daughter was still a toddler. She'd said she wasn't ready for motherhood, wasn't ready for the sacrifice. She'd walked away and never looked back. leaving him with a confused child and a broken heart he'd tried to glue back together with work and routine. He'd tried dating once, about a year ago, a woman from the gym. She was beautiful and confident, and for a few weeks he'd felt like maybe he could be normal again. But when she met his daughter, something changed. She started making excuses, started saying she wasn't sure she was ready for the kid thing. And then came the final date, the one that still echoed in his head. They were at a nice restaurant. He'd talked about his daughter, about how proud he was of her reading progress. The woman had smiled politely, but her eyes had glazed over. When the check came, she touched his hand and said the words that cut deeper than any insult. "You're a really good guy, sweet even, but you're just so predictable, you know? Like, I can already see your whole life mapped out. Work, daycare pickup, bedtime stories. There's no room for anything exciting." He'd paid the check without saying another word, drove home in silence, and decided that maybe he just wasn't the kind of man women wanted anymore. But he couldn't accept that, wouldn't accept it. So he started trying again. He downloaded dating apps. He went to social events. He forced himself to put on a confident face and pretend he had his life together. And that's when he met Rebecca. She was everything he thought he needed. Polished, successful, the kind of woman who wore expensive perfume and talked about wine pairings. She worked in marketing, traveled for business, had an apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows. When she agreed to a date, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. They met for coffee first. She was charming, funny, easy to talk to. She asked about his work but didn't ask about his daughter. He didn't bring it up. Some instinct told him that his single father status wasn't something to lead with, not with someone like Rebecca. The coffee date turned into dinner plans. Dinner plans turned into a second date scheduled for the following weekend. He was terrified. He stood in his bedroom the night before, staring at his closet like it held the answers to his entire future. Everything he owned felt wrong, too casual, too old, too boring. His daughter wandered in, rubbing her eyes. "Can't sleep. Just thinking about tomorrow, baby. Another date?" He nodded. She climbed onto his bed and sat cross-legged, watching him with those wise little eyes. "Do you like her?" "I think so. I mean, I don't know her that well yet." "Does she like me?" The question hit him harder than it should have. "She doesn't know about you yet." His daughter's face fell slightly. "Why not?" He sat down beside her and pulled her close. "Because I want to make sure she likes me first, and then I'll introduce you. Does that make sense?" She nodded, but he could tell she didn't fully understand. How could she? She was 6 years old. All she knew was that her father was dressing up for strangers and getting nervous about things that never seemed to go well. The next evening, he stood on his front porch, checking his reflection in his phone screen for the 10th time. He'd bought a new shirt, dark gray, buttoned down, the kind of thing he thought a man like him should wear to impress a woman like Rebecca. But something felt off. He couldn't name it, but it sat in his chest like a stone. That's when he saw his neighbor. She was on her porch, watering the plants that lined her railing. She glanced over and waved. Without thinking, he called out, "Hey, can I ask you something?" She set down the watering can and walked over, crossing the small patch of grass that separated their properties. "Sure. What's up?" He felt ridiculous suddenly, but the words came out anyway. "Does this look okay? I have a date tonight and I don't know. I feel like I'm trying too hard." She studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she reached up and adjusted his collar, smoothing it down. Her fingers were gentle, efficient. "You look fine." "Fine? That's it?" She smiled, but there was something sad in it. "You look like someone trying very hard to be something he's not." He frowned. "What does that mean?" She stepped back, crossing her arms. "It means you're worried about impressing her. But the right person won't need you to try this hard. That's easy to say when you're not the one going on the date. Maybe." She looked away toward the street. "Or maybe I just think you're already enough and you don't see it." He laughed, uncomfortable. "You barely know me. I know you're a good father. I know you care about people. I know you work hard and you don't complain even when things are difficult." She met his eyes again. "That's not nothing." For a moment, he didn't know what to say. There was something in her voice, something raw and honest, that made him feel seen in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. But then his phone buzzed. Rebecca, confirming the time. The moment passed. "Thanks." he said. I should go. She nodded and walked back to her porch without another word. He drove to the restaurant, his neighbor's words echoing in his head. But by the time he sat down across from Rebecca, he'd pushed them aside. The date was fine. Rebecca was charming. She laughed at his jokes. She talked about her work, her travels, her plans for the future. But when he mentioned his daughter in passing, something shifted. Rebecca's smile stayed in place, but her eyes cooled just slightly. So you're a single dad, she said. It wasn't a question. It was an assessment. Yeah, her mom left a few years ago. That must be hard. It is. But she's the best thing in my life. Rebecca nodded, but she changed the subject quickly. And when the check came, she said she had an early meeting and needed to get home. He drove back feeling hollow. When he pulled into his driveway, his neighbor's lights were still on. He could see her through the window, reading on her couch. He sat in the car for a long time, wondering why the only person who'd made him feel like he mattered tonight was the one he'd barely thanked. Rebecca texted him 3 days later. Short, polite, distant. Hey, I've been thinking. You're great, but I don't think I'm in the right place for something serious right now, especially with a kid involved. I hope you understand. He stared at the message in his car, parked outside his office. He should have felt disappointed, hurt even, but all he felt was tired. Another failure. Another woman who saw his daughter as a complication instead of a gift. He typed back a quick response. I understand. Take care. And then he deleted Rebecca's number. That night, his daughter asked about the date. He told her it didn't work out. She hugged him and said, That's okay, Daddy. You don't need a girlfriend. You have me. He held her tight and tried to believe it was enough. But the loneliness didn't go away. A week later, he was on his porch again, scrolling through dating apps with a kind of grim determination. His neighbor was outside, trimming the hedge that separated their yards. She wore dirt-stained jeans and a faded t-shirt, her hair tied back in a messy bun. She glanced over and caught him staring at his phone. Striking out again? He laughed despite himself. Is it that obvious? And only because you have that look. The one people get when they're doing something they hate but think they have to do anyway. He locked his phone and set it down. What else am I supposed to do? I can't just give up. Why not? She leaned against the fence, wiping sweat from her forehead. Maybe giving up on the wrong things would leave room for the right things. That's very philosophical for a Saturday morning. She grinned. I have my moments. He found himself smiling back. There was something easy about talking to her. She didn't expect anything from him, didn't judge him, just listened. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Why are you always so nice to me? She blinked, caught off guard. What kind of question is that? I mean it. You bring me food. You help with my daughter when I'm desperate. You give me advice, but I don't really do anything for you. She looked away, her expression shifting into something he couldn't quite read. Maybe I just like being nice. Nobody's that nice without a reason. She was quiet for a moment. Then she shrugged. Maybe I see something worth being nice to. Before he could respond, his daughter burst out the front door, wearing mismatched pajamas and carrying a drawing. Daddy, look! I made a picture of a dragon. He turned his attention to her, and when he looked back, his neighbor had already returned to her gardening. But her words stayed with him. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. He stopped checking dating apps as obsessively. He stopped planning his life around the idea that he needed to find someone. Instead, he started noticing the rhythms of his own life, the small moments of peace that existed when he wasn't trying so hard. And his neighbor was always there, on the edges of those moments. When his daughter got sick again, she showed up with medicine and popsicles. When his car broke down, she drove him to the mechanic and waited with him for 3 hours, just talking about nothing and everything. When he mentioned he didn't know how to cook anything besides pasta, she taught him how to make a simple stir-fry, laughing when he burned the garlic. His daughter adored her, started calling her Miss Lilly and asking when she'd come over again. One night after she'd stayed for dinner, his daughter climbed into his lap and whispered, Why don't you date Miss Lilly instead? He laughed it off. She's just our neighbor, sweetheart. But she's nice and she makes you smile. That doesn't mean you should ask her, Daddy. He didn't know how to explain that it wasn't that simple. That Lilly was just being kind. That she probably saw him the way everyone else did, as a struggling single father who needed help, not as someone worth wanting. But the thought lingered. He started paying attention to the little things. The way Lilly always remembered his coffee order. The way she listened when he talked, really listened, instead of just waiting for her turn to speak. The way she made his daughter laugh with silly voices and impromptu dance parties in the living room. And he started to wonder what it would be like if she stayed, not just as a neighbor, not just as a friend, as something more. But every time the thought surfaced, he pushed it down. Lilly was too good for him, too kind, too patient, too steady. She deserved someone who had their life together, not someone who could barely keep up with laundry and bills. Besides, she'd never given him any sign that she felt that way about him. Had she? One evening in early fall, everything changed. His daughter came down with a stomach bug, high fever, vomiting, the kind of sick that made him panic even though he'd been through it before. He called out of work, spent the day rotating between cold compresses and sips of water, and by evening he was exhausted. His phone buzzed. A text from a woman named Michelle. They'd matched on an app 2 weeks ago and had been chatting casually. She wanted to meet for drinks that night. He'd forgotten all about her. He started to type an excuse but then hesitated. When was the last time he'd done something for himself? When was the last time he'd felt like a person instead of just a caretaker? He called Lilly. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, is everything okay? I know this is last minute, but my daughter's sick and I have this thing tonight. I was going to cancel, but He stopped, hating how desperate he sounded. "Could you possibly watch her for a few hours? I'll pay you, of course." There was a pause. "You don't need to pay me. But are you sure you want to go out? She's pretty sick." "I know, but I think I need this. Just a couple hours to feel normal." Another pause. Longer this time. "Okay, I'll be there in 10 minutes. When she arrived, she had a bag full of supplies. Ginger ale, crackers, a stuffed animal she'd bought just for his daughter. She moved through his house like she belonged there, checking his daughter's fever, adjusting pillows, dimming lights. "You're sure about this?" she asked as he headed for the door. "Yeah, I'll be back by 10. She nodded, but something in her expression made him hesitate. "Lilly? Thank you for everything. I don't think I say that enough." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Go, have fun, we'll be fine." He left, and the guilt followed him all the way to the bar. Michelle was exactly what he expected. Attractive, confident, easy to talk to. But as she talked about her job and her hobbies and her travel plans, he found his mind drifting. He kept thinking about Lilly, about the way she'd looked at him before he left, about the way she always showed up, even when he didn't deserve it. Halfway through his second drink, his phone rang. Lily's name flashed on the screen. He answered immediately. "Is everything okay?" "She's fine," Lilly said quickly, "but her fever spiked and she's asking for you. I gave her medicine, but I think she just needs her dad." He was already standing, throwing cash on the table. "I'm coming. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Michelle protested, but he barely heard her. He mumbled an apology and left. When he got home, Lilly was sitting on the edge of his daughter's bed, singing softly. His daughter was asleep, her small hand clutching Lily's. He stood in the doorway, watching them, and something in his chest cracked open. Lilly looked up and saw him. She carefully extracted her hand and stood, moving toward him. "She's okay now, fever's down. She just needed to know you were coming back. I shouldn't have left. You're allowed to have a life. Not if it means leaving her when she needs me." Lily's expression softened. "You're a good father. You know that, right?" He didn't feel like a good father. He felt like a man who'd been running in circles, chasing something he couldn't even name, while the things that mattered most were right in front of him. "Stay," he said suddenly. She blinked. "What?" "Just for a little while. I'll make tea, or we can just sit. I don't want to be alone right now." She hesitated, and for a moment he thought she'd say no, but then she nodded. They sat in the living room side by side on the couch, cups of tea cooling in their hands. They didn't talk much. Didn't need to. The silence between them was comfortable, familiar. At some point she rested her head on his shoulder. He didn't move, afraid to break the moment, and for the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. When she finally left, well past midnight, he stood in the doorway and watched her walk home. He didn't know what this meant, didn't know if she felt what he was starting to feel, but he knew one thing for certain. He didn't want her to be just his neighbor anymore. The next morning he woke up with clarity he hadn't felt in months. He wanted Lilly, not as a neighbor, not as a friend, as something real, but the thought terrified him. What if he was misreading everything? What if her kindness was just that, kindness, and nothing more? What if he ruined the one stable, good thing in his life by wanting more than she was willing to give? He decided to wait, to test the waters, to see if she felt it too. Over the following weeks, he found excuses to see her. He invited her to dinner, casual and friendly. He asked for her help fixing a loose cabinet. He brought her coffee in the mornings, the way she always brought him soup, and she responded. She smiled more, lingered longer, touched his arm when she laughed. His daughter noticed too. "Are you and Miss Lilly boyfriend and girlfriend now?" "No, baby, we're just friends." "But you like her, I can tell." He couldn't deny it. "Yeah, I do." "Then why don't you tell her?" "Because it's complicated. Grown-ups always say that," she said, exasperated. "But it's not complicated. You like her, she likes you, just tell her." If only it were that simple. But then Michelle texted again, apologizing for how their date ended, asking for another chance, saying she understood about his daughter now and wanted to try to make it work. He stared at the message for a long time. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to delete it and focus on what he had with Lilly, whatever that was. But another part of him, the part that still felt like he needed to prove something, wondered if he was being unfair. Michelle was giving him a second chance. Maybe he owed it to himself to take it. He texted back, "Sure, let's try again." When he told Lilly he had another date planned, her smile faltered for just a second, but she recovered quickly. "That's great. I'm happy for you. You think I should go? Why wouldn't you?" He wanted her to tell him not to. Wanted her to say she'd been waiting for him to see what was right in front of him. But she didn't. She just smiled that sad smile and changed the subject. The date was scheduled for Friday night. He spent the days leading up to it second-guessing himself, but he didn't cancel. On Friday afternoon, he stood on his porch again, adjusting his tie. He'd bought a new one, navy blue. He thought it made him look more put together, more like the kind of man someone like Michelle would want. But he felt wrong, like he was wearing a costume. Lilly was on her porch reading. She glanced up and their eyes met. He called out before he could stop himself. "Do I look okay?" She set her book down and walked over slowly. She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You look like you're trying too hard," she said quietly. "That's not helpful. I'm being honest." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I just want to make a good impression." "Why?" "Because that's what you do on dates. You try to be your best self." She stepped closer, and he could see something shifting in her eyes. Something raw and tired and done with pretending. "You don't need to impress anyone," she said. He laughed, uncomfortable. "Easy for you to say." "No." Her voice was firmer now. "I mean it. You don't need to impress her. You don't need to impress anyone. You're already enough. You've always been enough." He stared at her, confused by the intensity in her voice. "Lilly, what are you? At least, you've always been enough for me." The words hung in the air between them. His heart stopped. She took a shaky breath, and when she spoke again, her voice cracked. "I've been in love with you for 2 years. Since the day I moved in and saw you playing with your daughter in the front yard. I've watched you struggle and fight, and try so hard to be everything for everyone. I've helped you because I couldn't stay away, but also because I hoped maybe one day you'd see me, really see me, not as the nice neighbor, not as the person you call when you're desperate, but as someone who could love you the way you deserve to be loved." He couldn't speak, couldn't move. "But you never did," she continued, and tears were sliding down her cheeks now. "You kept looking everywhere else, kept trying to impress women who didn't care about you, kept asking me for advice about other people while I stood there and broke a little more each time. Lilly, I can't do this anymore." She wiped her eyes roughly. "I can't keep watching you chase people who don't see what I see. I can't keep pretending it doesn't hurt. Why didn't you tell me?" His voice came out strangled. "Because you never saw me." The words burst out of her, angry and devastated. "Because every time you looked at me, all you saw was the safe option, the backup plan, the woman who would always be there no matter how many times you walked past her." "That's not true, isn't it?" She laughed bitterly. "You're standing here about to go on a date with someone you barely know, and you're asking me if you look good enough for her. Do you have any idea how that feels?" He reached for her, but she stepped back. "I don't want to be the person you settle for when everyone else says no," she said. I don't want to be the consolation prize. You're not, then what am I? She looked at him, eyes red and pleading. What am I to you? He opened his mouth, but no words came, because he didn't know. Or maybe he did, but he was too afraid to say it. The silence stretched too long. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected this. That's what I thought. She turned and walked back to her house. This time she didn't look back. He stood there, frozen, watching her door close. His phone buzzed. Michelle, asking if he was on his way. He should have canceled. Should have run after Lilly. Should have told her everything he was feeling. Everything he'd been too blind and stupid to see until she'd said it out loud. But he didn't. Instead, he got in his car and drove to the restaurant. Because admitting he'd been wrong, admitting he'd wasted 2 years chasing the wrong things while the right person stood beside him, was too much to face. The date was a disaster from the start. Michelle talked, but he couldn't focus. Every word she said sounded hollow compared to Lily's confession. Every laugh felt forced. Every moment felt wrong. Halfway through dinner, Michelle reached across the table and touched his hand. Are you okay? You seem distracted. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have come. Her expression hardened. Let me guess, there's someone else. He didn't answer. She pulled her hand back. You know what? I thought you were different, but you're just like every other guy. You don't actually know what you want. She left without another word. He paid the check and sat alone in the empty restaurant, his phone in his hand. He should text Lilly, should call her, should do something, but shame kept him paralyzed. When he finally got home, her house was dark. He stood in his driveway for a long time staring at her window and hated himself for not being brave enough to knock. His daughter was asleep when he went inside. The babysitter gave him a strange look. You're home early. Didn't go well? No, he said quietly. It didn't. After she left, he sat on the couch and replayed every word Lilly had said, every moment he'd missed, every sign he'd ignored. She loved him. She'd loved him this whole time, and he'd been too busy trying to impress strangers to notice the woman who already thought he was enough. The next morning, he tried to talk to her, but when he knocked on her door, she didn't answer. He saw her car in the driveway, knew she was home, but she wouldn't come to the door. He left a note. I'm sorry. Please let me explain. No response. Days passed. Then a week. She avoided him completely. Didn't come outside when he was there, didn't answer his calls or texts. His daughter noticed. Where's Miss Lilly? Is she mad at us? No, baby. She's just busy. Did you do something bad? The question hit him like a punch. Yeah, I think I did. Then say sorry. I'm trying. But sorry wasn't enough. 2 weeks after their confrontation, he saw a moving truck in her driveway. Panic seized him. He ran over, saw her carrying boxes to the truck. What are you doing? She didn't look at him. I'm moving. Where? Does it matter? Yes. Of course it matters. She finally met his eyes and the exhaustion in them broke him. I can't live next door to you anymore. I can't keep watching you from my window and hoping you'll wake up one day and see me. I need to move on, for my own sanity. Lilly, please, we can talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Her voice was hollow now. You made your choice. You chose the date with Michelle. You chose to keep looking for something better instead of realizing what you already had. And I can't blame you for that. But I also can't keep breaking my own heart. I was wrong. I know. She picked up another box. But that doesn't change anything. Please don't go. Goodbye, she said softly. And she walked into her house, leaving him standing alone in her driveway, surrounded by boxes that represented the end of everything he'd been too blind to appreciate. For 3 days, he couldn't function. He went through the motions, made breakfast, dropped his daughter at school, went to work. But everything felt hollow, like he was moving through fog. His daughter noticed. She was too young to understand heartbreak, but she understood absence. On the 3rd night, she crawled into his lap while he sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Daddy, why is Miss Lilly leaving? He didn't know how to answer. Did she stop liking us? The question shattered something inside him. No, baby. She didn't stop liking us. Then why? He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Because I hurt her feelings. I wasn't paying attention to how special she was, and I made her feel like she didn't matter. But she does matter. I know. Then tell her. I tried. She won't listen. His daughter pulled back and looked at him with those impossibly wise eyes. Then try harder. That's what you always tell me. If something's important, you don't give up. She was right, of course she was right. He'd spent 2 years being a coward, hiding behind excuses, convincing himself he wasn't good enough, that he needed to be someone different, someone better, before he deserved love. But Lilly had never asked him to be different. She'd loved him exactly as he was, and he'd thrown it away because he was too afraid to believe it was real. He wasn't going to make that mistake again. The next morning he drove to her house. The moving truck was gone, but her car was still there. He knocked on the door, his heart hammering. No answer. He knocked again. "Lilly, I know you're in there. Please, just give me 5 minutes." Silence. "I was an idiot," he called through the door. "I was so focused on trying to be someone I thought women wanted that I didn't see the one woman who already wanted me. You were right, about everything. I've been chasing validation from strangers while ignoring the person who made me feel like I mattered. Still nothing. I'm not asking you to forgive me," he continued. "I just need you to know that these past 2 weeks have been the worst of my life. Not because I'm lonely, but because I finally understand what I lost. And I can't let you leave without fighting for you the way you deserved me to fight all along." The door opened. Lilly stood there, eyes red and swollen. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. "You don't get to do this," she said quietly. "You don't get to show up now and say the right things just because I'm leaving. I know. You had 2 years. 2 years to see me, to choose me, and you didn't. I know," he repeated, "and I can't take that back. But I'm here now, and I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that I finally see you, that I finally understand what I've had this whole time." She shook her head, tears spilling over. "It's too late." "Why?" "Because I've already signed the lease on the new place. Because I've already spent 2 years waiting for you to wake up. Because I can't keep hoping you'll change when you've shown me exactly who you are. Then let me show you who I can be. I don't want potential. I want someone who chooses me first. Not after everyone else says no. Not when it's convenient. First." The words cut deep because they were true. He nodded slowly. "You're right. I don't deserve another chance. But I'm asking anyway. Not because I think I've earned it, but because losing you is the worst mistake I've ever made. And I can't live with myself if I don't at least try to make it right." She wrapped her arms around herself, like she was trying to hold the pieces together. "I need you to leave. Lilly. Please." Her voice broke. "Just go." He wanted to argue, wanted to stay until she listened, but he'd already taken too much from her, so he left. But he didn't give up. Over the next week, he tried everything. He left notes on her door, sent flowers, texted apologies, but she never responded. His daughter grew increasingly upset. She drew pictures for Lilly and begged him to deliver them. She cried at night, asking why Miss Lilly didn't come over anymore. On the 7th day, she finally confronted him. "You're not trying hard enough. Baby, I've tried everything." "No." She crossed her little arms. "You're doing boring grown-up stuff. You need to do something big. Something that shows her you really mean it." "Like what?" She thought for a moment. "Like in the movies, when the boy runs through the airport to stop the girl from leaving." He smiled despite himself. "This isn't a movie, but it should be." She grabbed his hand. "Come on, Daddy, you're good at fixing things. Fix this." Her faith in him was humbling. That night, after she was asleep, he sat at the kitchen table and thought about what she'd said. Something big, something public, something that proved he wasn't afraid anymore. And then he knew exactly what he had to do. Lilly was supposed to move out on Saturday. Her parents were driving into town to help with the final load. He'd met them once, briefly, when they'd visited last year. They were kind people, protective of their daughter. And he knew they'd heard about him, knew he was the neighbor who'd broken her heart. On Saturday morning, he woke up early, made breakfast for his daughter, and then he told her the plan. Her eyes lit up. "Really, but I need your help. I'll do anything." They spent the morning preparing. He wrote and rewrote his words until they felt right. She made a sign with markers and glitter. Together, they loaded everything into the car. At noon, they drove to Lily's house. The moving truck was there. Her parents were loading boxes. Lilly was nowhere in sight. He parked across the street and got out, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. His daughter grabbed the sign and held it up proudly. He walked across the street. Lily's father saw him first. His expression hardened. "I don't think you should be here." "I know," he said, "but I need to talk to your daughter just for a minute, and if she tells me to leave, I will. I promise." Lily's mother appeared from inside the house. "What's going on?" "He wants to talk to Lily," her father said, his tone making it clear what he thought of that idea. "Please," he said. "I know I don't deserve her forgiveness, but I need her to hear this." Lily's mother studied him for a long moment. Then she called into the house. "Lily, there's someone here for you." Lily appeared in the doorway, and when she saw him, her expression went from surprise to anger to something that looked like pain. "What are you doing here?" "I came to say something I should have said 2 years ago." He took a breath. "And I'm not leaving until you hear it. My parents are here." "I know. That's why I'm doing this now. Because I want everyone to know. I want the whole world to know." She stepped onto the porch, arms crossed defensively. "Know what?" He gestured to his daughter, who held up her sign. It read in bright pink letters, "Miss Lily, please don't go. We love you." Lily's hand flew to her mouth. "For 2 years," he began, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "I looked for someone to validate me, someone to prove I was worth something. I dated women who didn't care about me. I tried to become someone I wasn't. And the whole time, the most incredible woman I've ever met was standing right beside me, seeing me exactly as I was, and loving me anyway." Tears were streaming down Lily's face now, but she didn't speak. "You made me feel like I mattered when I was convinced I didn't. You showed up for my daughter when no one else did. You were patient and kind and steady, and instead of appreciating that, I took it for granted. I told myself you were just being nice. That someone like you couldn't possibly want someone like me." "Stop," she whispered. "I can't, not until you understand." He stepped closer. "You were right about everything. I was trying to impress people who didn't matter while ignoring the only person whose opinion I should have cared about. I was a coward. I was selfish, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Lily's mother had tears in her eyes too now. Her father's expression had softened slightly. "I know I don't deserve another chance," he continued. "I know I've already asked too much of you, but I'm asking anyway. Because I'm in love with you, Lily. I think I've been in love with you for longer than I realized. And if you leave, I'll respect that. But I couldn't let you go without telling you that you're not a backup plan or a consolation prize. You're the person I should have chosen from the very beginning. And if you give me the chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you." The silence that followed felt eternal. Lily wiped her eyes, her hands shaking. "You really hurt me. I know. I don't know if I can trust you. I'll earn it back, however long it takes. What if I still want to move?" His heart sank, but he nodded. "Then I'll let you go, but I'll wait for as long as you need." She looked at his daughter, who was crying now too, clutching her sign. Then she looked at her parents. Her mother smiled gently and nodded. Finally, Lily looked back at him. "You really mean it?" Her voice was small, fragile. "You're not going to wake up tomorrow and realize you made a mistake. The only mistake I made was not seeing you sooner." He held out his hand. "You don't need to impress anyone. That's what you told me. And you were right. But neither do you. You're already everything I never knew I needed." She stared at his hand for a long moment. Then she took it. "I'm still mad at you," she said. "I know. And I'm not canceling the lease. Not yet. I understand. But maybe." She took a shaky breath. "Maybe we can start over. Slowly. As slowly as you need." His daughter dropped the sign and ran forward, wrapping her arms around both of them. "Does this mean Miss Lily isn't leaving?" Lily laughed through her tears. "Not today, sweetheart." "Good. Because we need you." "I need you too," Lily whispered, looking at him. "Both of you, I always have." He pulled her close, and for the first time in weeks, he felt like he could breathe again. 6 months later, on a quiet Sunday evening, he stood in front of the mirror adjusting his tie. But this time he wasn't nervous. This time he knew exactly where he belonged. His daughter appeared in the doorway. "You look perfect, Daddy." "You think so?" "Yep. Miss Lily's going to love it." Lily walked in from the kitchen, wearing the red shirt she'd been wearing the day she'd confessed her feelings. She smiled when she saw him. "Ready for our dinner date?" He crossed the room and took her hand. "I don't need to impress anyone anymore." She laughed. "Good, because you never did. But I still want to try, for you." She kissed him softly. "You already do, every single day." His daughter made a gagging sound. "Gross. Are you going to be all kissy at dinner?" "Probably," Lily said, grinning. Then I'm sitting at a different table. They laughed together, the three of them, in the home they were building. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. And for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be enough. Not because he'd impressed anyone, but because he'd finally let someone see him. And she'd chosen to stay.